Hi guys, it's Mary McIntyre. Welcome back to my channel. One of the things that I'm probably best well known for within the astronomy world is creating star trails, and I have done my star trails talk so many times, but I've never talked really about how to do star trails on my channel, so I'm rectifying that now. It's a lovely cold crisp clear night here. It's actually Mark's birthday, but star trails are quite easy to set up, so I'm going to set up my camera now. There's also a possibility that we might get a bit of auroral activity, so I'm going to set my camera up and leave it running on the mains adapter, and hopefully I will get something. So let's get started. For this I'm using my Canon 1100D fitted with the 18 to 55mm kit lens. The reason I'm using that rather than the wide angle is because it goes down to f3.5. And that means if there is a chance of catching some aurora later on, there's more chance of it being picked up than the f4.5 lens. For my location, I pretty much find that ISO 800 works the best. Yeah, ISO 800 is good because it preserves the star colour, but it's a high enough ISO that I can get a decent amount of sky in without too much noise. So if you've got a better camera than me that isn't 10 years old, then you may be able to go higher with the ISO. But stars are a point source of light, so basically if you go too high you could lose the star colour. I go with 30 seconds, and that's because it's the longest that you can expose for without going into bulb. You don't want to do it all in one long exposure. Most of the UK, the skies are not dark enough for that. But if you're going to run all night like I'm intending to do, doing lots of short exposures means you have literally thousands of messages the next day. Thousands of photographs to deal with the next day. So this is what's going on. I'm doing 30-second exposures. I've got my remote shutter cable plugged in, so I'm just going to take a picture now. I've got it pointing north. I've got it pointing north from my back garden. I'm kind of near the house so that I can plug the camera in and keep an eye on it. So this is the photo that's just come off, 30-second shot. There's a bit of cloud in the northern sky at the moment. But yeah, that should be good. So we've got the tail of the plough here, and the pole star is kind of up there in the middle. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a bit of clearing and I'll be able to stack quite a few of these to create some star trails. So I'm going to leave this running for as long as I possibly can, so hopefully it'll stay clear most of the night. I will check on it before I go to bed and just make sure it's not going to rain on it and get my camera wet. So I'll go as long as I can now, and then I'll review when I see how many pictures I've got. So there's the crescent moon. There was a beautiful conjunction last night and tonight with the crescent moon with Venus and Jupiter. This phone, not going to see much else unfortunately in the dark. But yeah, you can hear the camera clicking away. It's now darker because the moon's getting lower, twilight has passed, the sky is clearer. I don't want to touch the camera in case I wobble it, so I'm just going to keep checking and I'll leave it running and see how long I can get. I think that's a fox. Absolutely terrifying. It's gorgeous out here, it's so dark, and the first thing I heard was that shrieking over the hill behind our garden. I'm glad I'm this side of the fence. Hi guys, it's now just gone midnight, and although not solid cloud, if you just look at this picture, there are so many bands of thin cloud now. Visually, I'm struggling to even see much of Ursa Minor. It's just so murky. So I'm going to stop shooting images. I've been going for a few hours, which is great. Now, one thing that is really important with a camera that's as old as mine is shooting some dark calibration frames. This does two things. First of all, it helps to reduce the noise because the dark is taking a photograph of the dark signal noise of your camera. It will take a few of those. The software will average that out and subtract it from the image, so that's great. And it also gets rid of hot and cold pixels, which annoy me beyond belief when I see them in my images. So you can clone them out, but when your camera's old, there's a lot of them to clone out. So and they really stand out with star trails because the stars are obviously all trailed, and these blue and red dots and dead pixel dots show up all over the place, which are just awful. So all I'm going to do is put the lens cap back on and just take probably 15 shots exactly the same. So I'm going to take the mains power cable out, put a battery in, just leave that taking pictures with the lens cap on while I pack everything away. So I think I forgot to say as well, I had a dew band on the camera lens because it's very, very cold tonight. So I'll insert a picture of what that looks like, but yeah, you can use any kind of dew band. Right, so I'm going to pack away and go to bed, and tomorrow I'll be back to have a look at what we've got. Okay, so I shot this Star Trails data on the 23rd of February, and I was intending to make this video the day after. I didn't get time to do that. Now, I mentioned when I was taking the pictures there was a chance of some aurora activity. Since then, we had 2 nights with mega aurora activity, so if you're already following my channel, you'll have seen that. So my time has been completely taken up with aurora processing, media inquiries. It's just been completely insane. So it is now the 2nd of March, and I've finally had time to sit down and have a look at this data. So although I was shooting for several hours that night, there was a lot of cloud around. So what I've done is I've chosen the best sort of 40 minutes of data for the purposes of demonstration. You can obviously do this for a shorter period of time or a longer period of time. It's really up to you. So I've got 80 images here. So if you do the maths, 30 seconds times 80 doesn't, oh, it does kind of come to 40 minutes. But sometimes it doesn't tally up because the write to card speed can slow things down a bit. And over a long period of time, you can end up with a slight discrepancy in the time you've been imaging versus how many pictures you have. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to demonstrate how to use StarStax. So all I did here is drag and drop the images into StarStax. It's really that easy. You can go up the top there and do file and open if you want to, but you can just drag and drop and that's absolutely fine. Now you can go through your images, and the great thing about StarStax is if you've got gap filling mode over here selected, there are other options, but gap filling is the one you want for Star Trek. So I'm battling with a cat here. So gap filling is what you want. And the great thing about that is if you have an aircraft that is super intrusive, or a security light comes on, or somebody goes past with a torch or car headlights, you can untick the image. So for example, if this was a problem picture, you can just untick it and it will fill the gap that was left behind by that image. There are a lot of aircraft in these images. I've scrolled through, but it's a fact of life over Oxfordshire, so I'm kind of okay with the high level star trails. So I have 80 pictures here and I'm in gap filling mode. And as I said, I wanted to add some dark subtraction frames to help with the noise. So click the select subtract dark images, and then we need to add them. So if you click on the darks button, I'm currently in the images to stack. I've also got all my darks in a folder. So just select those, Control A will select them all, and then open. And then it will put those dark frames at the bottom. And what the software will do is take an average of all of those. I think I shot 14 instead of 15, but it doesn't matter for this purpose. So the software will average all of that and subtract it all from the images, and that's what gives you a smoother result. Now I want to show you as well how to make a time-lapse video. So if you want to do that, click the cumulative image box. And what I like to do here is choose a different folder. So I've already created a folder called cumulative. That way you don't mix up your cumulative and your non-cumulative images, because that would be terrible. Now the file name it gives are so long that quite often I've got a complex filing system on my computer. So by the time you've add all of this stuff onto the file name, it can actually be too long to even save to the folder. So I'm just gonna, what was the date again? I've forgotten, 23rd. So I'm just going to put 23rd cumulative, and then it will put 001 or probably quadruple 01 or whatever as the file name. So it will number them sequentially through the set of data. The downside of that is it has a different file name from the originals, but it really doesn't matter. So that's that sorted. So basically, once you've done that, nothing else to do other than press the stack button. So it's going to average the dark frames, and then it will start to build the stack as we watch. It's kind of fun to watch this, and you really see how many aircraft there are in Oxfordshire as this builds. Now, obviously, if you've shot a lot of images, this will take a significantly longer amount of time than this will with just 80 images. But really, you can see already you are starting to see star trails. Pretty much anything from 20 minutes up is sort of okay for circumpolar. If you're pointing your camera elsewhere, the stars move faster in a given period. You won't get the concentric rings, but the stars do move a bit more quickly compared to the ones that are in the northern sky. So you can use that to your advantage if time is limited. Okay, so now just save the image. So if you just click on the save button, I don't want to save it in the cumulative folder, so just go back up a level and I'll leave that file name because it shows me the file names that were stacked. So next up, I'm going to show you how I could turn that. Well, first of all, I'm going to show you how to process the star trails picture, really simple. Then I'll show you how I make the time-lapse video. Okay, so I've opened the image in Faststone Image Viewer, and the great thing about star trails is that if you get the settings right in the first place, you could get away with doing nothing to this image. I know some people are kind of offended by the quantity of aircraft trails, but if you shoot early in the evening in most of the UK, you get a lot of air traffic like that. Now you can already see, because we kept the ISO lower, there is some nice star colour there. So that's good, not much to do. And because I deliberately not stacked all the stuff with all the cloud, there's a little bit on the horizon, but there isn't even too much of that kind of red light pollution cloud fog that we tried to get rid of. So for this, I might add a little tiny bit of noise reduction, just a smidge. It's pretty smooth already. I'll probably just go into levels a little bit, just bring just a tiny bit of contrast, not too much, and just brighten that up a smidge. Doesn't need it, to be honest, but it can take a little bit of brightening. Then in the colors tab, add just to boost the color a little bit. You can go like mad with that, but that makes the stars a bit too garish. You want it natural. So just a little bit of color there. That's fine. Now, if you did have light pollution, you can take the red and tone that down a little bit and make that look better. But this doesn't really need that because there's just not really much going on there. So yeah, but get that back to 0. And that's pretty much all that there is needed to be done. I mean, as I said, this could be shared without any processing whatsoever because the software is really good. You've got your darks taking care of the noise. I've selected the best data so that I didn't get too much in the way of cloud. So yeah, it's looking kind of pretty good. Now, there will sometimes be the odd little bit of hot pixel or hot cold pixel, dead pixel that gets missed. If you wanted to, you can go through and clone those out. There are really very few of them. Some of these are probably tumbling satellites, actually. They're probably flashes from tumbling satellites, but there's nothing too kind of in your face there other than the dotted aircraft trails. There are so many. So yeah, that's fine. So you can just save that. I like to just save it with underscore and then the software that I've used for processing. So _FS. And that's job done. So you can add your watermark if you want to. Now, obviously, because I was shooting this intending to try to capture aurora, I've sort of gone with north, not necessarily in the right place. So the pole star is sort of off center a little bit, so you could crop that if you wanted to, but you can frame this however you want. This is just showing you the step-by-step process that I follow when I create star trails, and there are well over 100 different star trails images on my Flickr page. I just love creating them. So right, so let's exit this, and I'm going to show you how I create a time-lapse video. So I've just taken all of the cumulative files and dragged and dropped them into pip. Now, I have shown you how I create a time lapse in pip before now, but I'll run through that again. So I have many windows open on my desktop. So basically all the images are listed here. So this is the naming convention that we chose for the cumulative files. Now, don't be alarmed by the number of tabs and options in this piece of software. It is actually designed to pre-process planetary video imaging, but we're not using it for that. We're just using the function that allows you to create a time lapse. Okay, so in the input options, everything as default. Processing options, the one thing that I do here to just reduce the overall file size of the video, which can come out absolutely massive, is to change this to 1200 pixels. What that does is not cropping it, it's basically shrinking the resolution of each image down. If you leave it at over 4000, like I've got a crop sensor on my old camera, and even then a fairly short time lapse can end up being many gigabytes, and my laptop can't even play the video, and the AVIs are so big. So I basically resize them to about 1200, and for what I do with the videos, I stick them on YouTube, or sorry, the cats have been, I've got one on my lap, the other one clawing my backdrop. So yeah, sorry, basically what I do is stick them on Flickr and YouTube, so there's no need for them to be kind of 4K resolution, so 1200 is fine. Quality, just make sure that box is not ticked. We don't want to change the order of this for quality purposes. We want to leave them in the order we've put them in. Play them in forward order, and I like to just tick this box here that says pause the final frame. What that does is just when the video ends, rather than cutting off abruptly, it finishes moving, and then the viewer gets a chance to realize it's stopped before it cuts off. It's just personal preference. So I choose 30 frames for that because I'm intending to make this a 15 frame per second video, and that will just give you 2 seconds of time before it cuts off, which I prefer. So in the output, we want an AVI, and over here, this will default to 60 frames per second, which will basically mean our 40 minutes will be done in like less than 2 seconds, so we don't want that. So basically 15 frames per second. You can put a lower or higher figure if you want. It depends how long your time lapse is. This is only 40 minutes, so 15 is probably going to be a tiny bit fast. But if you've done this for 12 hours, which is my record, 15 frames per second makes a very long video. So usually with 30-second shots for around about an hour, 15 frames per second works. But you can change that with your final editing software if you want to. So once you go to the do processing, you basically click the start processing button, and that will just basically run through and create a time lapse for you and save it in another folder within that original folder. So this is what it looks like when you just take the straight images and turn them into a time lapse. Still beautiful, really cool, but it's not showing you star trails. I'm just going to play this clip again a second time. I am actually playing this at half speed because that 40-minute star trails done at 15 frames per second was a little bit fast for the duration of the star trails. So if you take the cumulative files that we created in StarStax, you get this result. So you can actually see the star trails being painted out against the background sky, and this is such a stunning way to present the images. no matter which way your camera's been pointing. So I'll just play that clip again through, also being played at half speed from the 15 frames per second. So the speed, really, you just need to adapt depending how many images you're working with and how long you was imaging for. Now, as mentioned before, that you don't have to point your camera north. If you want the concentric rings, you do, from the northern hemisphere, need to point at Polaris. If you're in the southern hemisphere, then the south celestial pole is somewhere near the Southern Cross. But you can point your camera north, south, east or west or anywhere in between, and you will get a very different result than pointing at the celestial pole. So it's really good fun to experiment with that. And also, if there's a local landmark or monument or a water tower like this, you can position yourself in different places and get star trails there and get a really different feel just based on which way your camera's pointing. So if it's something that you can get around different sides of, then just play with it and see what kind of effects you can get. I did that with this wind turbine. It's amazing how different these images look just depending which way the camera's pointing. So that's it for this video. If you found it helpful, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you like stuff like this. If you are a member of a camera club or an astronomy society, don't forget that I do a full Star Trails masterclass. So if that's something that you think your club would be interested in, just let me know. I do talks in person and on Zoom, so it'd be great to talk to you guys and teach you in much more detail how to create stunning star trails. So I'll see you in my next video. Until then, take care and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.